I used to believe I was doing okay. Not amazing, not terrible, just okay. The kind of okay where you stop asking questions because the surface looks smooth enough. My name is Oliver, and on paper, my life looked solid. I worked as a software engineer at a mid-sized tech company. I earned a little over $100,000 a year, had my own small apartment, and never worried about whether my card would decline at the grocery store. I told myself that meant I was responsible, smart, safe. My days were predictable in a comforting way. I woke up to the same soft buzz of my phone alarm, shuffled into my little galley kitchen, and made coffee in a stained mug I kept meaning to replace. Laptop bag by the door. Sneakers lined up in a row that never quite stayed straight. I would scroll through emails while my toast burned on one side, then rush out the door, promising myself I would be earlier tomorrow. Work was fluorescent lights, code reviews, and the low hum of other people's keyboards. I wore noise-canceling headphones and pretended that made me more focused, not more isolated. I liked the feeling of solving problems in clean, elegant lines of code. The logic made sense. If something broke, you could trace it, fix it, deploy again, cause and effect. After work, I tried to be the kind of person who had hobbies. Pick up basketball on Wednesdays. Cheap takeout with my girlfriend Mia on Fridays. Weekends spent gaming, meal prepping half-heartedly, streaming shows everyone else had already seen. I had enough money to order delivery without thinking too hard, but not enough to feel like I was really getting ahead. That was the quiet ache underneath everything. I watched people online my age, talking about financial freedom, early retirement, building wealth while they slept. Meanwhile, I had a decent salary and a savings account that felt embarrassingly small for the effort I was putting in. It was like jogging in place on a treadmill while everyone else claimed they were sprinting on open roads. So I did what a lot of people my age do when they feel behind, but do not want to admit it. I started consuming information, podcasts about money, videos about investing, threads about people turning a few hundred into life-changing amounts. I told myself it was just research, just staying informed. At night, my apartment was lit by the glow of my monitor instead of the floor lamp. Candles half melted on the coffee table, takeout containers pushed to one side. Market charts, line graphs, and candlestick patterns started to look less like numbers and more like doors. Doors that might lead somewhere faster than my paycheck ever could. I still paid my bills on time. I still saved a little every month. From the outside, nothing looked dangerous. But I remember one particular evening, sitting there in the blue light, feeling a strange pull in my chest as I watched a coin spike in real time. It was the first time I felt like my life might be only one decision away from changing completely. I wish I had recognized that feeling for what it really was. Not opportunity, not freedom. Just the first small crack in the foundation I thought was unshakable. The crack widened the night I discovered leveraged crypto trading. It started innocently, or at least that is what I kept telling myself. I was scrolling through a forum after midnight, the kind where people post screenshots of their profits like trophies. One guy claimed he turned a few hundred into 5 figures in a single weekend. Another bragged about quitting his job because he was too good at this game. I knew better than to believe everything online. Still, something hooked me. Not the money, not at first. It was the certainty they all seemed to have, the confidence, the belief that the old rules did not apply to them. I wanted that feeling. A link led me to a platform I had never heard of. Big flashing numbers, charts moving in real time, a slider where you could multiply your trade by 2 or 5 or even 20. My logical brain whispered that it was dangerous. My emotional brain whispered that I was a software engineer. I was analytical, careful, smart. Smart enough to do this responsibly. I tested it with a tiny amount, barely anything. A few minutes later, it went up. Not by a lot, but enough to make my heartbeat quicken. Enough to make me feel like I had discovered something no one else around me understood. I ended the night $20 ahead. It might as well have been $2,000, based on how proud I felt. I slept terribly, waking up every hour to check the chart again. The next day at work, I could not focus. My code reviews felt like chores. My lunch tasted bland. All I could think about was that small win, the thrill of watching numbers move in my favor. By the time I got home, I had convinced myself to try again. A little more this time. Still safe. Another win. Then another. Mia noticed before I did. She asked why I was staying up so late, why I seemed distracted during dinner, why I kept checking my phone like I was waiting for bad news. I told her I was just learning more about investing. She smiled nervously, unsure if she should be impressed or concerned. I convinced myself this was discipline, hustle, building a future. But the first loss hit me like a punch to the ribs. It was small compared to what I had gained, yet it hurt twice as much. Something changed in me. The voice in my head that used to say good job now said get it back. I stopped seeing this as investing and started seeing it as a challenge, a puzzle, something I needed to win. I told Mia everything was fine. I told myself the same lie. The truth was simpler and scarier. The first sign of trouble is not a dramatic moment. It is the quiet shift when you stop walking away after a loss and start running after it instead. And I had already started running. The night everything collapsed did not feel dramatic at first. It felt routine, familiar. I had fallen into a pattern without even realizing it. Come home, toss my backpack on the couch, open my laptop, and let the blue glow wash over the room while the sun disappeared outside my window. I was tired that evening, the kind of tired that settles behind your eyes and makes everything feel heavier. Work had been stressful. I had barely eaten. Mia and I had argued earlier about whether I was too invested in this new hobby. I told her she did not understand. I told her this was how people built wealth now. I told her I knew what I was doing. I did not. I opened the platform and stared at the chart. The coin I had been tracking all week was dipping hard. Every part of me knew I should stay out. My stomach was already tense. My hands were cold. But the dip looked temporary. A pullback, a setup, a moment to strike before the bounce. At least, that is what I told myself. I chose the highest leverage the platform allowed. Something reckless. Something I knew would either explode upward or blow up everything I had left in that account. The second I clicked confirm, my heart started pounding. I watched the screen like people watch a horror movie through their fingers. Every movement of the chart felt like a physical jolt to my body. But after a few minutes, the price began to rise. Slowly at first, then faster. My mouth went dry as my unrealized gains jumped. It felt like electricity crawling across my skin. I told myself to close the trade and take the win. Instead, I went to bed. I convinced myself I could wake up to more. Just a little more. Just one more big victory to prove I was not foolish, not addicted, not desperate. I fell asleep with the phone on my chest, the chart still glowing. When I woke up, the world felt wrong. It took a full minute for my brain to understand what I was seeing. The chart was a straight downward cliff, not a drop, a collapse, a total avalanche of red. The kind of movement people joke about online, but never think will happen to them. My balance was almost zero. My savings account was nearly empty. The trade had liquidated overnight. Everything I had built, everything I believed I was good at, everything I thought I controlled, was gone before I even opened my eyes that morning. I stared at the screen as the room spun. My ears rang. My chest squeezed so tight I could barely breathe. I tried refreshing the app, as if maybe it was a glitch, but the numbers stayed the same. Then the panic hit. The kind that tastes metallic in your mouth. The kind that makes your hands shake so badly you can barely hold your phone. The kind that leaves you sitting on the edge of your bed, staring at the carpet, knowing your life has just changed and you cannot undo it. Mia called me, asking why I had not shown up for our morning plan. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. She asked if something was wrong. I whispered one word: everything. That was the moment the side hustle stopped being a hobby and became a disaster. A full-scale collapse I had caused with my own hands. The hours after the crash felt unreal. like I was moving through thick fog. I kept opening and closing the app, even though the numbers never changed. My savings were almost wiped out. My checking account balance was so low it looked like a mistake. I sat on the floor of my bedroom, back pressed against the wall, trying to breathe through the rising panic. Eventually, reality forced its way in. I opened my email. That was when the second collapse hit. Overdraft alerts, margin interest charges, notifications from my credit card about a pending minimum payment I had completely forgotten about. A message from the trading platform saying I owed additional fees because my account had fallen below the maintenance requirement. I felt my stomach twist. I had been so focused on the trades themselves that I had never paid attention to everything surrounding them: the late-night deposit boosts, the quiet automatic credit card payments, the random subscription services I meant to cancel months ago, the groceries I had been mindlessly putting on my card. All of it was finally catching up. I opened my bank statement. That was the moment everything snapped into focus. Line after line of charges and withdrawals stared back at me. I saw the slow bleed. I saw the reckless decisions. I saw the money I kept telling myself I would make back later. I saw how close I had already been to the edge without realizing it. Rent was due in a little over a week. My utilities would follow shortly after. My credit card bill was larger than I remembered. I had been so caught up in chasing charts that I had stopped tracking anything else. I printed out every bill and statement I could find, the papers scattered across the carpet like the aftermath of a storm. The more I sorted through them, the more suffocated I felt. Interest rates I had ignored for years suddenly made sense. Overdraft fees stacked like bricks on my chest. Late fees I had not even noticed until now stared at me in bold letters. It felt like drowning in numbers that refused to stop rising. I ran my hand through my hair and felt this deep, hollow ache settle into my chest. This was not something small I could patch up. This was not a mistake I could laugh off in a few days. This was a financial avalanche, and I was buried underneath it. I tried to call Mia. Once, twice. She answered on the third ring, her voice soft but tense. She asked me what was going on, and I did not know how to tell her that the man she thought was stable, steady, responsible, had just destroyed the entire foundation of his life overnight. So I told her I needed time to figure things out. She offered to come over. I told her no. I could not let her see me like that. Not sitting on the floor, surrounded by bills, not shaking, not broken, not like this. I kept looking at the papers until the words blurred. The weight of the numbers pressed down harder and harder until I felt like the walls were closing in. I wanted to run from it, but it was everywhere. Every envelope, every notification, every mistake I had ignored now demanded payment. And for the first time in my life, I realized I had no idea how to get out of the hole I had dug. Everything felt tight. Air, money, options, hope. I had hit the point where all the logical excuses faded and only the truth remained. I was in real trouble, the kind that does not go away on its own, the kind that forces you to confront everything you spent years avoiding. The days that followed were some of the darkest I have ever lived through. It was not just the money, it was everything the money touched, every relationship, every routine, every sense of who I thought I was. Mia came over anyway. She knocked twice, then let herself in with the spare key I had given her months earlier. I was sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers, bank statements, a half-eaten sandwich I could not finish, and a laptop screen frozen on a balance I could not bear to look at again. She stood there for a long moment, taking it in. I could see the hurt on her face, not because of the mess, but because she knew I had kept all of this from her. "Oliver," she said softly, "why didn't you tell me?" I did not have a good answer. I had been lying to myself for so long that lying to her had felt like the natural next step. I told her I did not want her to worry. She pressed her lips together like she wanted to believe me, but could not entirely. We tried to talk, but every conversation felt like walking across shattered glass. Every time she asked a question, I felt a wave of shame cut through me. Why did I risk so much? Why did I not stop? Why did I hide it? I had no answers that made me look like a reasonable person. At work, things were not any better. I stared at my screen for hours, unable to focus. My code was sloppy. My reviews were late. My manager pulled me aside to ask if everything was all right. I told him I was just tired. He nodded politely, but I could tell he did not believe me. I avoided my friends, ignored group chats, canceled dinner plans. Every time someone sent a meme or asked how I was doing, I felt sick thinking about how they still believed I was the stable one. My phone became an enemy. Every vibration made my stomach clench. I turned off notifications, but it did not help. I kept expecting another alert from the bank, another fee, another reminder that everything was falling apart. At night, sleep never came. I would lie awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every decision that led me here, every late-night trade, every double-down moment. Every time I told myself I had it under control. The silence in the room was heavy, but my thoughts were louder than anything outside. The worst part was the anger. Anger at myself for being reckless, anger at the crypto market for crashing, anger at those online strangers who made it look easy, anger at the version of me who thought he could outsmart everything. But beneath the anger was fear, a deep, bone-level fear that I had permanently ruined my future, that one bad night would define the rest of my life, that the people who cared about me would see me differently now, not as reliable, not as steady, just as a cautionary tale. Mia eventually told me she needed space. She said it gently, with tears in her eyes, but the words still hit me like a blow. She loved me, but she did not know how to help me if I would not help myself. When she walked out, the apartment felt colder than ever. By the end of that week, I was exhausted in a way that went beyond physical. My mind felt bruised. My chest felt heavy all the time. I was living in survival mode, reacting instead of thinking, drowning instead of swimming. And yet, beneath all of it, a quiet truth started forming. I could not keep living like this. Something had to give. Something had to change. I just did not know what that change would look like yet. The breaking point did not arrive as a dramatic explosion. It came quietly, in small, sharp cuts that finally became too many to ignore. It was a Tuesday morning when I woke up to 3 overdraft notices in a row. 3. I had seen one before, maybe 2 on a bad month when I forgot about an automatic withdrawal. But 3 at once felt like the universe grabbing me by the shoulders and shaking me awake. My checking account was deep in the negative. Not a few dollars, not a small mistake. A number so red and so low that I felt sick looking at it. The bank fees stacked like a tower on top of one another, adding more weight to an already crushing load. I stared at the screen in disbelief. My breathing turned shallow. My chest tightened the way it did the morning of the crash. The panic came fast, like a wave rising out of nowhere. I sat on the edge of my bed, fingers tangled in my hair, trying to understand how I had let it get this bad. How I had ignored so many warning signs. How I had convinced myself things were still salvageable when the truth had been screaming at me for weeks. Then another notification popped up. A utility shutoff warning. I felt the blood drain from my face. I had never, in my entire adult life, been close to losing basic necessities. I had always been responsible enough to avoid that line. But now I was standing on the wrong side of it. And all because I had chased an illusion that promised me a shortcut. I tried calling the company, but I did not even know what to say. My voice cracked when the representative asked if I wanted to make a payment arrangement. I hung up before answering. I could not bring myself to admit how little I actually had left. At work, I could not concentrate. My hands were shaky on the keyboard. The screen blurred more than once. My manager asked if I needed a day off. I told him no, because the truth felt humiliating. I walked to my car during lunch and sat there with my forehead pressed against the steering wheel. I cried. Not quiet, dignified tears. I cried the way people cry when their life finally corners them. Shoulders shaking, breath uneven, a sound slipping out that I did not recognize as mine. It hit me then. The real fear. The kind that settles in your bones and whispers that if you do not change something now, you will lose everything you have left. Not just money, not just stability, but relationships, career, identity, self-respect. I whispered the words into the stale air of my car. I cannot do this alone. It felt like defeat. It felt like surrender. But it also felt like something breaking open inside me. A tiny crack of honesty cutting through all the denial. That night, I sat on the floor of my apartment with the lights off, bills and warnings scattered around me, the air thick with shame and exhaustion. I knew I had to make a choice. Keep pretending I could fix this by myself, or finally admit I needed help. For the first time, I let myself imagine the possibility that I could not climb out of this hole without someone reaching in to pull me up. And that thought scared me even more than the debt. But it was the truth. I could not survive this on my own anymore. Something had to change. Someone had to intervene. I just did not know that the person who would save me was already watching everything from a distance, waiting for the moment I was finally ready to listen. The person who finally reached me was the last person I ever expected. His name was Samuel, 50-something, quiet, wore the same gray button-down shirts every week. He had this calm presence that made him blend into the background at work, like a piece of old furniture no one notices until they need it. We were not close. We exchanged nods in the hallway, sometimes small talk about code releases or the awful office coffee. That was it. But Samuel noticed things, more than I realized. It was late one evening when the office was almost empty. I was still at my desk, pretending to work while staring at my checking account for the 1,000th time. The screen glowed with numbers that made my stomach twist. I heard footsteps behind me. "You all right, Oliver?" His voice was steady, not prying, not judgmental, just steady. I closed the tabs on my screen too quickly, too defensively. He noticed, of course. He did not comment on it. "I am fine," I lied, badly. Samuel pulled up the chair across from me, sitting slowly like he had all the time in the world. He placed a mug of plain black coffee on my desk, the cheap kind from the downstairs machine. It smelled bitter and burnt. "You have looked tired," he said, "for weeks now." I froze. "I know that look," he continued, eyes soft. "I used to wear it every day." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He let out a slow sigh and leaned back in his chair. "I was a gambling addict for almost 20 years. The words hit me like cold water. I stared at him, unsure what to say. Samuel did not rush. He did not try to explain everything at once. He simply let the silence sit between us until I finally managed to breathe again. "I see the signs," he said gently. "The late nights, the shaking hands, the way you jump whenever your phone buzzes, the dark circles, the disappearing focus, the pressure building behind your eyes." I looked away, shame flooding me. "You do not have to tell me what happened," Samuel said. "Not yet, but you need to know something." He waited until I met his gaze again. "You are not the first person to fall into this." My throat tightened. My chest felt heavy. I did not respond. "I lost my house once," he said quietly. "My marriage, most of my family. I burned every bridge I touched, all because I thought I was smarter than chance, smarter than the market, smarter than myself." His voice did not shake. It did not crack. He said it with the softness of someone who had already forgiven himself a long time ago. "I do not want that for you, Oliver." A lump formed in my throat. He continued, "I am not here to lecture you. I am here because someone once sat across from me the way I am sitting across from you now. Someone who pulled me back before I drowned." I felt something inside me begin to crack open. Not fear this time. Relief. The kind you do not recognize until it is already flooding your chest. Samuel stood, but before leaving, he placed a small notebook on my desk. The cover was worn, edges frayed, pages filled with years of ink. "This saved my life," he said. "It might help save yours, too." I ran my thumb across the cover. "Meet me tomorrow after work," he added, "if you want help. If not, no hard feelings. But I think you want help." He walked away, leaving me alone with the quiet hum of the office lights. I opened the notebook. The first page was simple. No fancy formatting, no motivational quotes. Just 4 words written in neat handwriting. Write down everything honestly. For the first time in months, I felt myself breathe deeper than a shallow gasp. For the first time in months, I felt a hand reaching into the darkness I had fallen into. And for the first time in months, I felt a tiny flicker of hope. Not enough to save me, but enough to make me show up tomorrow. When I showed up the next evening, Samuel was already waiting in one of the small conference rooms near the end of the hall. The lights were dim, only one lamp buzzing softly in the corner. It felt nothing like the polished boardrooms upstairs. This room was older, quieter, almost comforting in its simplicity. He gestured toward the seat across from him. "Sit," he said with a small smile. "Let's take this one step at a time." I took a slow breath and opened the notebook he had given me. The first page stared back at me like a challenge I had avoided my whole life. Write down everything honestly. Samuel folded his hands on the table and waited. Not impatiently, not with pressure, just a steady presence that made it impossible to run anymore. "We start with the truth," he said. "Not the version you tell people, not the version you tell yourself, the real version, the numbers that hurt to look at." It felt like peeling skin. I wrote slowly, my handwriting uneven. Every dollar I owed, every dollar I earned, every essential bill, every stupid subscription I had forgotten about, every reckless deposit into the trading platform, every hidden fee that had slipped beneath my radar. My throat tightened with each line. Samuel nodded gently. "Good. Honesty is painful, but it is the only place a real plan can begin." When I finally stopped writing, the page looked like a confession. My confession. He took the notebook and scanned it only long enough to understand the shape of my mess. Then he pushed it back toward me. "This is your foundation," he said. "Now we build structure around it." He explained it slowly, like he was teaching someone how to breathe again. The idea that every dollar needed a job, every cent needed a home. Not in a restrictive way, but in a way that gave control back to someone who had been living without any. "Your money has been drifting," he said, "floating wherever impulses pushed it. When you assign every dollar a place to go, you take the wheel back." I had never heard it put that way. It made something inside me settle. Then came the part I feared most. "You are going to freeze your lifestyle for a while," he said. The words landed heavily. No eating out, no shopping, no games, no subscriptions, no random apps stealing your attention. Not forever, just until you can breathe again. I felt embarrassed by how much resistance rose inside me. I had always thought of myself as someone who lived modestly. But hearing him say it out loud made me realize how many little comforts I clung to, how many escapes I used to distract myself from the truth. He let me sit with it. "This is temporary," he said gently. "You are not being punished. You are making space for yourself to recover." Then he told me something I did not expect. "You need to call the people you owe." I shook my head immediately. "I cannot do that." "You can," he said, voice calm. "And you will. You owe them honesty too. Ask for itemized statements. Ask for payment plans. Ask for reduced fees. Ask if they have assistance programs." He leaned back in his chair. "You would be surprised how many people will help you if you show them you are willing to face your mistakes." The idea terrified me. It made my hands sweat just thinking about dialing the numbers. But beneath the fear was a strange sense of relief, like I would finally stop running. He went on, describing how I could pick up extra hours, small side work, anything that would help rebuild what I had lost, not in a desperate scramble, but in a focused, steady way. He talked about selling old electronics, freelancing small coding tasks, even helping neighbors with tech fixes. "Your income is not a weakness," he said. You just have not been using it with intention. The last part surprised me most. Samuel asked me to save a tiny amount, not hundreds, not even close, something small, $20, maybe $50 if I could manage it. That is not enough to fix anything, I said. It is not about fixing, he replied. It is about oxygen. Everyone needs a little breathing room. Even a small cushion can keep panic from running your life. I felt something inside me loosen for the first time in months, a tiny sense of possibility, like maybe I was not doomed to stay in this hole forever. Before I left, he opened the notebook again, flipping to a blank page near the back. Every 2 weeks, he said softly, you will check in with yourself, update your numbers, adjust your plan, celebrate tiny wins, no matter how small. I stared at the empty page. It did not feel like a notebook anymore. It felt like a map. When I left the office that night, the hallway felt different, lighter. My steps felt steadier. The weight had not disappeared, but for the first time, it felt like I was carrying it with someone else. I walked out into the cool evening air, clutching the notebook to my chest, and for the first time in a long time, I believed something I had not believed in months. I might actually make it out of this. I did not wake up a new man the next morning. There was no sudden clarity or instant discipline. What changed was quieter than that. It was the steady, unfamiliar feeling of having a direction, a map, a lifeline. The first real test came when I opened my banking app before work. My instinct was to scroll past the ugly numbers, to avoid them the way I always had. Instead, I forced myself to look at every line. Not with panic this time, but with the same honesty Samuel had asked of me. I made my first round of calls during my lunch break. The fear was real. My voice shook. My palms were damp. I half expected the people on the other end to lecture me, to shame me, to ask me how someone making over $100,000 a year could end up in this mess. But they did not. A representative from my credit card company walked me through a hardship plan without a hint of judgment. She lowered my interest rate for the next 6 months and waived a late fee after reviewing my account. Another representative from the bank explained how I could set up alerts to avoid future overdrafts. One even suggested I check if I qualified for a temporary fee reversal. I had spent weeks drowning in fear, only to find out that asking for help was not nearly as humiliating as I had imagined. It was human. After work, I sat at my kitchen table with the notebook open. I began assigning every dollar a job, not in a rigid, joyless way, but in a way that made me aware of what my money was doing for me. For the first time, I saw exactly where it was going and why. Then came the lifestyle freeze. Canceling subscriptions felt like ripping off a bandage. I had forgotten how many small charges had been eating away at my paycheck. Music apps, cloud storage, a gym membership I barely used, a game server I had not logged into in months. Each cancellation felt like taking back a little bit of control. I packed lunches instead of ordering out. I brewed my own coffee, the cheap kind Samuel drank. I chose the longer commute route because it saved on tolls. None of it was glamorous. But after a week, I felt cleaner, sharper, more awake. I also picked up overtime whenever it was offered. A coworker needed help debugging an old project, so I volunteered. I fixed a neighbor's laptop for a small fee. I sold an old gaming console I had not touched in years. Each small bit of income felt like placing another stone on solid ground. My relationship with Mia was complicated. She kept her distance, but she checked in with texts once in a while. She wanted me to heal, but she needed to see that I was actually doing the work. I could not blame her. I had broken her trust long before I broke my bank account. Some nights were harder than others. I would lie awake, feeling the urge to check the markets, to open those apps, to slip back into the rush of chasing a win. But I had deleted every trading platform from my phone. Screenshots of losses stayed taped inside my notebook, a reminder of where that path led. 2 weeks passed. Then another 2. At each checkpoint, I updated the notebook. Not perfect progress, just honest progress. Seeing the numbers shift, even slightly, became a kind of fuel. My debt was still there, but it no longer felt like a monster waiting to swallow me. It felt like something I could face, something I could chip away at one deliberate choice at a time. Little victories began to stack, a payment plan accepted, a fee removed, a small emergency fund beginning to grow. My checking account finally stabilized. The overdraft kept its distance. I felt a sense of control I had never known before. Work felt different too. My focus returned in slow waves. My code became cleaner, my reviews faster. Even my manager commented on the improvement, though he did not know what had changed. But I knew. This was what climbing out of a hole felt like. Not dramatic leaps, not sudden transformation, just steady, unglamorous work, a kind of discipline I had never learned until now. One evening, Samuel walked past my desk and paused. "You look lighter," he said. I nodded. "I feel lighter." He smiled, small and knowing. "Good. Keep going. You are not done yet." I knew he was right. But for the first time in a long time, the road ahead did not feel impossible. It felt like something I could walk. One breath, one choice, one honest number at a time. I used to imagine recovery as a finish line, a moment when everything would be fixed and I would wake up feeling brand new. But the truth is quieter, softer, more human than that. Recovery does not arrive with fanfare. It settles in slowly, almost silently, like morning light drifting across a room you once kept dark. Months passed. My life did not transform overnight, but it became steadier with each honest choice I made. My checking account no longer threatened to dip into danger every week. My savings, small as they were, finally had a heartbeat again. The weight of debt that once crushed me now felt manageable, even predictable. I could see the path forward. I could see the progress. I could breathe. One quiet Saturday morning, I stood in my kitchen making coffee, the same burnt-smelling kind Samuel preferred. I looked around my apartment and realized something had shifted. It was still the same space, still imperfect, still cluttered in the corners I avoided. But it felt different because I was different. The chaos in my head had eased, the noise had dimmed. The frantic urge to chase money had been replaced by something steadier: patience, humility, control. Mia came over later that afternoon. It had been weeks since we talked in person. She stepped inside slowly, almost cautiously, like she was entering a place she used to know but no longer recognized. I did not try to impress her or prove anything. I simply told her the truth, everything I had done, everything I had faced, everything I was rebuilding. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she sat with her hands folded in her lap for a long moment. Then she asked the question that mattered most. "Are you okay now?" I thought about it. "I am getting there," I said. It was the most honest answer I could give. We are still figuring things out. Healing does not follow a straight line. Trust takes time. But she sees the change in me. She sees the discipline. She sees someone who is no longer hiding behind screens and secrets. At work, Samuel remains the quiet anchor I did not know I needed. We share coffee during slow afternoons. He asks how the numbers look, and I show him the notebook that has become a record of my ascent back to stability. He never praises me loudly. He does not need to. His nods carry weight. "I am proud of you," he said once, almost in passing. I felt the truth of it settle deep inside me. What surprised me most was how much lighter life felt when it was simple. No more charts at 3 in the morning. No more chasing miracles on volatile markets. No more pretending I was smarter than the risks I refused to acknowledge. I still have a long way to go. Debts to pay down, habits to unlearn. But the difference now is that I am not running from anything. I am moving towards something steadier, something real. A life I can trust. A life I can maintain. A life grounded in choices instead of impulses. Sometimes I think back to the version of myself who believed he needed to get rich quickly. The version who convinced himself risk was the same thing as opportunity. The version who thought shortcuts were the same thing as progress. I forgive him now. He was scared. He was impatient. He wanted a future he did not know how to build. But I am building one now, slowly, honestly, brick by brick. If someone out there is listening to this and sees a piece of themselves in my story, I hope they know this much. Falling apart is not the end. Losing everything is not the end. Even the worst financial mistakes can become turning points if you are willing to face them head on. And if you found a little strength or hope in my journey, I hope you will consider staying with me for more stories like this. You never know who might need the reminder that healing is possible.